Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes podcast. I'm your host, Phil Huber. Today is episode number 134, and we're breathing a little bit of walnut dust here today with projects going on featuring our favorite domestic Midwest hardwood. We'll also talk about lumber selection and choosing some favorite tools for working with flat panels. Want to give a shout out to Shaper Tools for sponsoring today's episode. They're the makers of the Shaper Origin, the handheld CNC router that brings digital precision to the craft of woodworking. Tackle joinery, cabinetry, hardware installation, and more with speed and precision. You can try it risk-free in your shop for 30 days. Visit shapertools.com to learn more. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
Logan
like we're all, I was just going to say, I feel like we're all on camera and we're sitting here trying to get goose out of our teeth.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to eat more goose.
Logan smoked some goose for us today. So, goose pastrami. Is that what it is?
Yep.
So, it's good.
And it's delicious, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a nuisance bird, so you got to get rid of them somehow.
Right. Send them back to Canada.
Well, yeah. They kick them down every year. It's this constant thing. They come south, then we send them north. They come south, we send them north.
All right, so for today's episode, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is part of it's related to the fact that I have recently completed my dining room table project for my sister, which I'm really happy with. And she wants me to also make her a sideboard to go with it, which also makes sense. So because I need more to do in my life, Logan roped me into doing the sideboard article as a popular woodworking article. So
yep. That's right.
It's kind of like playing like your major league season one place, and then off season you go play somewhere else. So
you know what I call it? Killing two birds with one stone.
Mm-hmm.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was bad.
So I have the table's made out of walnut, and the sideboard's going to be walnut, both in a mid-century style. I'll put a photo of the table on the show notes page so you can see what it looks like. Or if you've been following along on our Facebook shop updates, I've been featuring it there too. So you'll see the completed one on the update for this week. So, but in building this, all the lumber came from one of our local sawyers. In fact, our favorite local sawyer.
Chunk of trunk.
Logan Whitmer. Chunk of trunk. And so I was using rough-sawn boards for this whole project, which is a different way of woodworking than going to a lumber yard or home center and picking out boards. And I would say that neither is better than the other. They're just different things. And, you know, we were talking about this the other day, and I guess I would compare it to like going to the grocery store and buying a whole chicken is like working with rough boards.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, home center lumber is more like getting the specific pieces you want. You know, that it's, you know, your boneless, skinless breasts or thighs or whatever. And
well, and it's
MDF
very much
is nuggets.
Yeah, and it's very much the same way where you buy the whole chicken, you get a lower price, but you know there's going to be some waste. Same thing with rough-sawn lumber. It's like you start with rough-sawn boards, you're paying a significantly cheaper price. You know, you figure probably, let's call it, you know, for walnut between $400 and $650 per board foot. Usually, lately, it's been more towards that $650 per board foot. Where you go buy
Right.
a surface board, you're going to pay $9, $10, $12, $14 a board foot. So,
Right.
you know, and I think you have more control.
Mm-hmm.
You do, and I think that there's just greater opportunity to work around defects more, or I mean, because like you said, there's going to be waste because it depends on, are you going to keep the sapwood and incorporate it into the project, or what about knots and things like that, you know? And a lot of those things, like I've kept a lot of those offcuts of pieces because, you know, especially on a sideboard kind of project, there are cleats and runners and things like that where they're smaller pieces that I can use some of those offcuts for.
Mm-hmm. I think the best part about working with the rough lumber is you get a couple barrels of sawdust at the end that you wouldn't get otherwise, you know, which is nice.
That is true, because we, in the video studio here, we did have a largely walnut-based dust collection bag, and then I know that I've seen Steve and Mark empty out the barrel in the shop.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
for the most once, it's not me.
Right. You're just the dealer here. Yeah. Yeah. Because I've been doing the same thing. We were building a steamer trunk out of white oak this week for the first episode of season 17 of the Woodsmith Shop, and we got the wood from Logan. So I've been filling up the shop dust collector with white oak chips or whatever. But yeah, like you said, it's very much like being a wood butcher. You get a lot of you get a lot more flexibility as far as when you're cutting it up. You're taking all the bones and the gristle, and like, this is going to be the roast, and I can make some bacon out of this, and here's the steaks, and so it's kind of fun seeing all that come together from rough lumber. So
well, and it's funny because I feel like the white oak that we're using for the steamer trunk came from a Dell here in town, or west of town. I was unloading it out of my
not
truck.
Not the singer, the town.
Sorry, yes,
right.
Not yes. But I was unloading it out of my truck, and with rough-sawn boards that have been air dried, they get that gray look to them, like they always do. And people in the know are like, yeah, whatever, that's just air dried lumber. That's what it is. But I get people coming out, they're like, oh, these look really rough. It's like, well, yeah, it's rough-sawn lumber. Here, let me show you what it looks like if I take a hand plane to it and take a 32nd, not even a 64th of an inch off. And then they're like, oh, okay. But it was interesting as I'm unloading this load, because this load came from the kiln. I had to get it in 2 truck bed fulls because there was too much for one pickup load. And I was kind of setting boards off to the side. I was kind of picking the choice ones for this project because I knew we want a good quarter sawn, really bright ray flex if we could get them, that highly figured kind of craftsman style look. And you can't see that on the face. I mean, maybe a little bit you can. You kind of get that shimmer of rays. But as I'm pulling the boards out, I'm looking at the end grain, and you can tell exactly which boards are quarter sawn, or you can say, okay, I can see this board has the pith in the very center, but it's perfectly quarter sawn on the outsides. So it's like you start looking at it with a project in mind, and you're like, oh yeah, for this steamer trunk, we only need our widest piece is like 2 1/4 inches. I mean, we had some panels that are a little bit bigger, but like 2 1/4 inches is all we needed. So it's like, oh, crack down the center. Perfect material on both sides. So, it's just a different way to look at it, which is fun to me.
And I'm sure we're guilty of it in our various magazines here. But one thing that's interesting is you get the idea a lot of times in reading about projects that, and maybe there are folk who can do this, that there are these perfect ideal boards that when you glue them together, like the color is a perfect match and the grain just flows together seamlessly, and there's no knots and swirls or buried crotches or something like that. And that's definitely not the case. And even if you have a bunch of boards to work with, you still have juggling competing goals. You know, like I need I need a panel that's going to be 18 inches wide. Well, if that's going to happen, I either need to do the top out of 3 boards, the sides out of 2 boards, maybe.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there are those perfect logs, but those are sliced into 45th of an inch veneers. You know?
Right.
Like, those aren't the logs that we turn into lumber. The logs we turn into lumber are the ones that are not perfect. It's how FAS works. I mean, the FAS grading system says you have to be able to get a 6-inch wide board that's 42 inches long. And then if you can do that out of a board, then it is the highest grade board available. It's a number 1.
Yeah.
Or first and seconds, you know. So
yeah, there's definitely strategy as you're going through the lumber to build projects, as far as picking out the best stuff for the top or the face or the doors, and then kind of hiding the lower grade stuff on the back or underneath or drawer backs or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of thinking involved as you're progressing through a project.
And I think it gives you the opportunity to highlight some of those features if you want. You know, Phil, you're talking about doing something with the drawers. You know, FAS standards say we cannot, sapwood and walnut is not a defect. However, most people don't want sapwood. Most people would cut it out. But you're looking at maybe including sapwood in the drawers and where they meet up to where it would be kind of a design feature, you know, which is cool.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the fun of working with this rough cut boards, is being able to kind of discover some of those things, or allowing the wood to be a natural material and not looking for perfect uniformity, you know, and working with it. So like this sideboard is going to have 2 sliding doors. So the length of it's going to be roughly divided into thirds. The middle section will have shelves and open. And then on the outer sides will be a bank of 4 drawers each. And those will be concealed by sliding doors. Well, and I thought it would be cool is if, you slide the door over to get to the drawers. Now, instead of just, another expanse of, just walnut like the rest of the case, what if I used some of these pieces that had sapwood? So there's going to be 2 4-inch drawers and 2 6-inch drawers. And, what if one edge of each of the drawers is sapwood? Then you get kind of an ombre look to it that I think can be kind of a fun surprise when you open it up, and it turns it into something that's not, you're not going to find that in most places. Yeah. But then in working with the defects of the piece, like the case bottom of this has some knots in it that are in various stages of acceptability, but only the middle third of this panel is going to be visible at all, because the rest is going to be, the outer sections are going to be, covered by drawers. So you'll never see that. So there can be all kinds of knots and whatnot in there, and I don't have to worry about it. And then even so, with open shelves in the center section, when you're looking at the piece from eye level or whatever, you're only ever going to see into the case a few inches, and who knows what's going to be put in there anyway. So really only all I need is the middle third and probably the first 6 inches or so that needs to be perfectly clear, if that's what I'm looking for, or free of knots or, really gross defects or something like that. But so anyway, it's just been a fun way of doing things. I mean, there is definitely more preparatory work, clearly, than working with prepared boards, but that's part of the trade-off.
I guess, in my opinion, I feel more confident in my boards if I prepare them. You know what I mean? Like if I go to let's just say Menards, okay? I don't buy lumber at Menards, but if I go to Menards, if I go to the Woodsman store, I go to Liberty, I don't trust that those boards I'm getting are going to be flat, square, and true anyways. You know? So I'm going through a lot of the same steps no matter what. It is a few more to, you know, take that extra eighth of an inch off of the thickness at the planer, or to break apart that board into sections, or, you know, most of the time, what you've been doing and what I have been doing is you go to the bandsaw, or I've seen John doing that with the oak. It's like you go to the bandsaw, and that breaks apart pieces really quickly. But I don't think it's that much work to do it, and for the cost savings, you know, the cost savings is huge. So it's like you're going to pay double for prepared boards versus rough-sawn. So
So anyway, it was just kind of fun to do, and, you know, exploring, you know, these, one of the larger projects that I've done in a while, and then having this many glued up panels that I've had to work with. So it's trying to deal with gluing up flat panels, scraping glue, all that kind of stuff. And I've been really loving my cabinet scraper plane that I made for being able to clean up mill marks and level joints and not have to worry about all crazy grain direction changes within the boards of the panels, so that I can concentrate on gluing up a panel that looks good to me, rather than trying to make sure the grain is all going in the same direction if I want to try and hand plane it. Special shout out to Shaper Tools. They make that Shaper Origin, the handheld CNC that lets you do all kinds of cool stuff with your woodworking, whether it's joinery and construction, or hardware installation, or inlay and marquetry, all that kind of stuff. You can check out their site, shapertools.com, to learn more. So what did you have, John, in, you know, you spent quite some time working on the pieces for that steamer trunk. Did you, anything stand out to you during that process?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of what Logan's alluded to. It's nice to know, or to start with the thicker boards, like what he said. Going to Menards, you buy a 3/4 inch board, and you don't know if it's flat or straight or any of that stuff. So oftentimes you end up trying to join it down, and you just don't have the meat there to get what you need out of it. So it's kind of nice starting with the thicker rough-sawn stuff and flattening it yourself, and kind of picking out the parts that way, I guess. So it's a little bit more work, but get what you want at the end, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Going back to what you were saying about including knots and sapwood, there's always some strategy in that too, because it's like you don't want to make it look like you were trying to go homogeneous heartwood, and then all of a sudden there's a piece of sapwood, and it makes it look like it's a mistake, or you just didn't care or whatever. So you got to kind of highlight those natural wood features and make it look like it was intentional. So, but
no, that's true. That's definitely the case. Because on the tabletop that I did, the center seam, there's just the little remnants of sapwood. So there's just like this slight oval shape in the middle where the walnut is a lighter color, and
so kind of it features that sapwood rather than trying to like push it out to the edge, and it's like, oh, they were trying to get rid of the sapwood and they just failed. And
right.
But,
Well, you know, it's funny.
Nice
I was talking to Phil about this earlier this week. I don't think you were in there, John. I just spent the last weekend down with Doug Stowe down in Arkansas. He's written dozens of books, teaches at Mark Adams. Doug really became known for his boxes. He's kind of like the box guy. And it was funny because Phil and I were talking, like, some of his boxes, when you see them in photos, they look a little chonky. Like some of them, it's like, it could have been a little thinner, or seeing them in person, they're so nice. Like, they are very nice. And it's like, okay, how nice can a box be? I mean, they're done well. But one thing I told Doug this when I was down there when we were in his shop, I said, one thing he does very well is he doesn't necessarily try to hide anything as far as a color or a defect goes. You know, like he's not using stuff that has big knots in it, but like sapwood, yeah, absolutely. But what Doug has been doing is he'll pull that color of the sapwood into a different aspect of the box or the table or whatever it is. So, you know, if it's walnut and it has a light streak of sapwood, he may end up making the pulls out of a maple or something that ties into that sapwood color. So I found it very interesting being down there with him, because he had several boxes made out of spalted quarter-sawn sycamore, and it had some really dark streaks in it, but then he did the base and the top out of every box in walnut because it tied that color right together. And it's like, oh, this is like, it shows a lot of thoughtfulness, I guess, if you think about it and you're deliberate about it, you know, it's not a defect then.
Yeah.
So.
Another thing for having, you know, because this table project, well, both of these projects are big and not as friendly to do in my home workshop, so I've been working on them here. So I've been doing a lot of stuff going back and forth from the main production shop to in the studio here, depending on what the setup is or the tooling or whatever. And I've found myself developing different work habits than I do at home. And like, I know, Logan, you're an apron guy and have a very well-appointed apron filled with all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
And when I'm working at home, I don't. My apron is mostly just to keep the chips and stuff off of me, and I don't usually carry anything in my apron. But I've noticed, and it kind of happened by accident, that all of a sudden I have in my apron here developed, like, I have a pencil pocket on the left side. I got my 6-inch ruler in there, a Sharpie, and a mechanical pencil.
Bingo.
And then the two front lower pockets, they're like my finishing pockets, I guess.
Okay.
Because one has tack cloth in it in a little baggie, and then the other side has an array of fine grit sandpaper, you know, for buzzing down dust nibs in between coats of sandpaper. So that was just kind of a curious thing where it was just, and like I said, it just kind of happened naturally, and then I just noticed that I had done that. And
it's what we call the EDC. It's your everyday carry. Is that what the kids are saying these days? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
I've heard some kids saying that on the playground, out on the streets.
No, I mean, so I started with my apron. My wife got me a Calavera one for Christmas a number of years ago, and I really liked it. It would ride down on me a little bit as I was wearing it. I like to sit higher and stuff, and it doesn't have a ton of pockets, but it's got, like, you know, I have a Polini rule I keep in there, kind of like you, like 6-inch rule, pencil, maybe a Sharpie, and some chalk. So I know where that's at all the time. Now this new one I have is one by Leather by Dragonfly. It's a super nice. God, it's so nice. They're an investment. They're not one you're just gonna on a whim go buy. They're an investment. You know, I think they're $500 starting. But they custom make it to you, so it fits like a tailored suit. I've never owned a tailored suit, but I can only assume that this is how a tailored suit fits. And like, everything has a place on it. It's like, you know, a place for everything and everything in its place. So I don't know how many, like, I'm sure you guys have noticed all these Pittsburgh tape measures floating around the shop from Harbor Freight. Almost guaranteed every single one of those has came from my shop. Almost guaranteed. I would just carry them in and set them down. This thing has if there's only one thing I'm ever going to have on an apron again, it's the tape measure clip. Okay. It's on my lower right hand side. I know where my tape measure's at. I don't even take it off the clip to use it, you know. Yeah, I mean, the apron itself holds a bunch of tools, and they're tools that I use most of the time. But that having something as stupid simple as having the tape measure on my apron, I know where it's at all the time, and I don't take it off. Yeah, I love my apron. If you guys can't tell, just wait till my shop at home's done. I'll be woodworking in just my apron and shorts. That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
We don't want to see photos.
Picture that, yeah.
You guys are welcome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of tape measures and walking off, I found that I have one tape measure that I keep at my table saw. And I just took the clip off of it, and it seems to like stay in one spot now, because I don't just kind of like naturally clip it onto my pocket or clip it and walk away. It just doesn't go anywhere. So that's my shop tip of the day. If you want your tape measure to stay, just take the clip off.
See, and part of the reason that I ended up using and making an apron a part of my woodworking practice is for those very same reasons, because I would end up going home or coming back into the house from being out in the shop. And it's like normally I get in the house and I, put my keys in the drawer and take my wallet out and whatever. And then I realized that it was like, there's my keys. Oh, there's my 6-inch ruler and the white pencil for marking walnut. And in my back pocket is my tape measure. And there's a small handful of screws in one of my other pockets. And like apron is nice.
Sawdust.
Yeah. Apron is nice because it keeps all the shop stuff. And then when I take it off, nothing is migrating in with me. All right, so we have almost one episode done of the TV show for season 17, which feels like the old story of the round river that just never ends. It just goes in a circle. And because I know there's a lot of people that haven't even started seeing season 16, and here we are on season 17 already. So,
yeah,
kind of fun to be jumping back into that again. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have on the schedule to have 4 episodes done by the end of this year, by December. So that's the stars we're shooting for, anyways.
Yep.
That's what the track Becky has us on.
Every year, don't we? And then it's like, we have this magazine thing we have to get done. So that always bumps stuff.
Right.
Yeah, well, then you
Those
get a couple of vacations
too,
or illnesses or something like that, and then that can throw things out of whack. But
yeah, it's tough this time of year because we have Thanksgiving that takes us, out of the routine, and then Christmas, and so it's like get as much done as we can to be ahead for January.
Yep. And we're closing in on the first relaunch issue of ShopNotes. That's been kind of fun to see those projects starting to come through now, and we have a lot of, I think we have a lot of really cool things in this issue, and I'm excited to see it go out the door and see people's reactions to it. So,
which people should be able to start subscribing to that soon. We've been working on getting the subscription page up. So I know I've had people ask about it. It's like, just wait. Hold on.
It turns out creating the content for the magazine might actually be the easiest part of it. And other than the fact that that's ongoing, whereas getting all the back-end systems up and running, especially for a digital publication, not even for a print publication would be largely the same, is kind of a whole nother animal, and thankfully we have people that can take care of it and not us, because otherwise it would never get done. All right, there you go. That wraps up for another episode of the ShopNotes podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, I want to hear about them. You can send me an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. The podcast is also available on our YouTube channel, the Woodsmith YouTube channel. And you can leave comments and questions and discussion topics there as well. Special thanks to Shaper Tools maker of the Origin, that kind of funky handheld CNC that does all kinds of stuff, whether it's cabinetry or hardware installation, inlay, joinery, all that and more. They have a special offer right now. You can have it in your shop risk-free for 30 days. Just check it out at shapertools.com. We'll see you next week, everybody. Bye.